has a number in their heads, the correct answer is 1,000 years. To put that into perspective, 1,000 years ago is when the Silk Road was used extensively as a means of transportation. The world's population was just 275 million people, and 1023 AD was 400 years before the arrival of Christopher Columbus in America. And looking 1,000 years into the future, this means that the plastic bottle I'm holding will outlive everyone in this room, everyone in this school, all of our children, all of our grandchildren, and will live to see around 30 generations after us. Even when it does break down, it will only continue to become smaller and smaller until it becomes something like this. Microplastics. Now, the invention of plastics is comparatively quite recent. The first fully synthetic plastic was developed by Belgian chemist Leo Baekeland in 1907. It is said that he beat his Scottish rival, James Swinburne, to the patent office by 1 day. Baekeland was also the first to coin the term plastics. The substance wasn't always popular, but there was one event, one disruption that would cause plastics to be produced in massive amounts and catapult the new substance into the spotlight. That event was World War II. During the war, there was an incredible need for easy-to-produce durable supplies. Copper, aluminum, steel, and zinc became precious metals that were allocated to the war effort to produce bullets and other weapons. Following the war, in the 60s and 70s, plastic usage only continued to skyrocket. But that usage began having a measurable impact on ecosystems and environments around the world. So, plastic pollution was becoming a large problem. But something else was emerging in the 60s too. In colloquial terms, it was known as hippie culture. Anti-war sentiments and the promotion of sustainable living were at a peak. The Summer of Love was in 1967. This combination meant that large plastic producers were in trouble. Facing backlash and growing disapproval, plastic companies sprang into action. They began lobbying, they campaigned, but perhaps most impactfully, they created the Crying Indian advertisement. Released in 1971, this advertisement had one message: stop littering. And almost overnight, plastic legislation efforts ceased. The responsibility had been shifted from producers to consumers. If not for this advertising campaign, plastic companies would have been held accountable for paying the cost to effectively dispose of their waste. This advertisement may be the single most effective and worst example of corporate sway on public attitudes. The ad was built on a mountain of lies. First, the Indian pictured is actually an Italian actor. Second, the organization behind the advertisement was portrayed as an advertising company designed for the public good. The name that was displayed was Keep America Beautiful. In reality, this was a shell company that represented a large group of plastic producers. Even today, plastic companies are still being let off the hook. The equivalent of one garbage truck is dumped into our oceans every minute. I want to step back for a moment and remind everyone listening that these aren't just statistics that are far removed from real life. I've seen the impacts of plastic pollution firsthand. For much of my life, I've lived in the coastal community of Huntington Beach, California. Growing up, I remember visiting the beach frequently as a child, running barefoot on the sand and swimming in the somewhat clear water. However, my family's beach visits slowly decreased as the water became more polluted, and nowadays we hardly visit at all, except for beach cleanups. Most of the time, when I pass by the water now, it's brown and murky. The floor is littered with plastic, and it's heartbreaking to see how the ecosystem has devolved in recent years. And plastic doesn't just have an impact through plastic pollution. 99% of disposable plastics are made from this: fossil fuels. Yes, that's right. The same companies that are behind oil and gas are the ones driving the plastic pollution disaster. With renewable energy efforts ramping up, fossil fuel companies see plastics as a new lifeline and a way to continue profiting. In fact, they're building up plastic infrastructure today in places such as Cancer Alley. This build-out of infrastructure has a disproportionate impact on marginalized communities and communities of color because it's primarily done in rural and less wealthy areas. Additionally, because oil companies receive billions of our tax dollars through subsidies, this means that we're subsidizing plastics too. Your tax dollars are at work destroying the environment and making corporations richer. Again, moving away from pure statistics for the moment, I need you to truly grasp the significance of what is being said. In my hometown of Huntington Beach, we suffered from an oil spill in October 2021 that led to a staggering 25,000 gallons of oil being released into the ocean. The spill also damaged our wetlands and had far-reaching impacts on local wildlife. Even as recently as last month, there was a mysterious oil sheen off our coast, and officials are still investigating where it came from. These same companies driving oil spills are the ones responsible for the plastic pollution disaster. Our tax dollars are, quite literally, funding our own destruction. I want to pivot a moment to ask you all a new question. How many do you recycle plastics? Show of hands. Looks like pretty much everyone. Now, which of these materials do you think is recyclable? Take a moment to think about it and make a guess. For the sake of this talk, we'll find recyclable as at least 5% of the products being recycled and reprocessed into something new when they reach a recycling facility. This means that to qualify as recyclable, 1 in every 20 plastic bags that are sent to recycling centers should be accepted and not rejected. Even under these very generous parameters, no material pictured above qualifies as recyclable. This is the newest lie being perpetrated by big oil companies. First, it was stop littering. Now that that's not working, recycling is their newest lie, and nearly everyone here is falling for it. In a Cal Matters article, journalist Marissa Garcia wrote, quote, "Every morning when State Senator Ben Allen would grab the newspaper from outside his Santa Monica home, he'd pull off the plastic sleeve bearing the triangular recycling symbol and throw it where he thought it belonged, in a blue recycling bin." But Allen soon learned that he was wish cycling, carefully sorting materials with the recycling symbol, only to discover that they weren't actually getting recycled. Quote, "It's technically recyclable under the best of conditions at 1,000 degrees in some lab in San Marino. But they're not recycled in the real world," he said. For over 50 years, the plastics industry, and therefore the oil industry, has clashed with environmental activists. They've invested heavily in promoting plastics through marketing, lawsuits, and lobbying efforts, all the while advocating for recycling, not bans, as the best solution to plastic pollution. All of this is despite persistent concerns about its effectiveness and the existence of weak recycling programs worldwide. This is how they were able to get that 3-arrow symbol on every plastic item manufactured, even if it isn't actually recyclable. Through intense lobbying and pressure, these corporations made misleading advertising legal. Now, you may be listening to all this and thinking something along the lines of, well, it's awful for the environment, but I'll still use it because it doesn't affect me negatively, and using plastic is easier. Well, in that case, I have bad news for you. Plastic does impact you negatively. Research shows that we are eating a credit card's worth of plastic every week. This happens in many ways, but one primary driver is that when plastics enter the ocean, they can be mistaken for food and consumed by wildlife. When we eat those animals as sushi or seafood, those plastics are then digested by us. This plastic is far from harmless. Studies have shown that phthalates, a compound commonly found in plastics, have been linked to brain damage in babies. Additionally, plastic usage has been linked to ADHD and hyperactivity. Most recently, studies published earlier this year have found that microplastics in our bodies can even lead to the formation of gallstones. There's still so much we don't know about the negative impacts of plastics, and scientists are continuously finding out more about the substance's dangers. We desperately need to transition away from this single-use model and implement a more sustainable circular economy. Unfortunately, we're nowhere near close to achieving this objective. Yet, there are reasons for hope. On June 30th, 2022, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed SB 54, a landmark new packaging law that, among other things, requires a 25% reduction in plastic packaging by 2032. It's not enough, but it's a start. I'll close with this. I once had the opportunity to meet Mandusha Kulkarni, an honoree of Time's 100 Most Influential People list. The number one piece of advice she gave me was striking. Quotes, "Run for office. We need more young people in government." In fact, the average age of a senator is 58 years old. We as a generation are moving into an era of unprecedented corporate control, and the need for change is greater than ever before. These generations must use their voices to inspire change, inspire action. And as soon as we turn 18, the onus is on us to vote. A mosaic is a piece of art made with thousands or even millions of tiny pieces that all come together to create something beautiful. Similarly, we will need the composites of a wide variety of actions from a large number of people if we're going to solve the plastic pollution crisis. It's time for us to join the fight against plastic pollution. Thank you.